what will happen. All these
Day one.
all these criminal migrants that have been flooded in the country are going to be the first to get thrown out of here. I mean, you've seen case after case, these heartbreaking tragedies. Those ones are going to get found and deported first. And look at this Venezuelan gang. You have a Venezuelan gang that is taking over entire apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado. And that's responsible, by the way, for some of the most heinous crimes that have happened all over the United States. The crime rate in Venezuela is down, I believe, a little bit over 60% over the last several years.
Are you trusting the official figures from the Venezuelan dictatorship?
Let's put it this way. If you're a dictator of a poor country with a high crime rate, wouldn't you send your criminals to our open border?
That wasn't my question. Are you trusting the figures of the dictatorships? Those are Maduro numbers.
Believing Maduro numbers?
I am believing that it is in the interest of a criminal dictator to let his criminals out of their jails and come to our country.
Do you have numbers, real numbers, not
I have
dictatorship numbers?
The Venezuelan gangs that have, you've seen the CCTV footage. I have a question. Who do you think? Answer me
My
this.
family is from Venezuela. I know very well the situation of Caracas and many other
Right, and
cities.
tell me, who were the people with the high-powered rifles in the hallway of that apartment building? Who were they?
They were gangsters from Venezuela.
Right. No American community.
But I was asking to you about figures, numbers,
What I'm saying
facts.
to you is the facts are the dead bodies. The facts are
You said that Caracas has a
facts are-
lowest crime
the
rate
facts
than the
are-
USA.
The facts are the mutilated bodies. The facts are the people in the morgues that are dead.
I was asking you about Caracas and the numbers in Caracas. Are you trusting the numbers of the dictatorship
I
to
am
state
trusting
what
the
you're saying?
fact that Kamala Harris is
Why are you
letting
yelling?
illegal immigrants into this country who are raping and murdering children.
I had been very respectful. Why are you yelling?
Do you know who Jocelyn Ungary is? Do you know who she is?
Do you know how
Tell me
many
who she
people
Who
is
she?
experiencing
Who is
violence
she?
in Caracas?
Who is she? Who is Laken Riley?
Why are
Who
you
is
yelling
she?
again?
Because I'm yelling because children are being raped and murdered.
I was just
by
asking for
illegal
figures,
immigrants.
and you have not
Children
replied to
are
me
being
about
raped
those
and
figures.
murdered. Do you know who Kayla
Do
Hamilton
you trust
is?
the numbers of
Do you know
Nicolas
her
Maduro?
story?
I'm asking
I
again.
trust a ruthless dictator will empty his prisons and send their criminals to our country.
So you trust his numbers?
The most dangerous gang in Venezuela is
You
now
trust
occupying
Nicolas
apartment
Maduro?
buildings. I trust that he does not want his criminals to be.
So you believe in his numbers?
I believe he's sending his criminals to our country.
And do you think that the crime rate in Venezuela have
Do you
decreased?
not believe the law enforcement reports of Venezuelan gangs in this country?
I was asking for
Are
the Venezuelan
gangs-
government
are
figures,
Venezuelan
not
gangs
the
in this
figures
country
here,
Or not?
sir.
Are Venezuelan gangs in this country or not? Yes or no?
What
Yes or
are
no?
the
Yes or
figures
no?
that you
Yes
say
or no?
to say
Yes
that
or no?
in Caracas
Yes or
the
no?
number is
Are
lower than in the
Venezuelan gangs-
USA?
Are Venezuelan gangs in this country or not?
So you don't have numbers.
Are Venezuela? You know who has numbers? The Department of Homeland Security. You can ask Mayorkas for numbers. You can ask the Director Ray for the numbers.
Sir,
I'm telling you.
you said
you think
that in
Nicolas
Venezuela
Maduro-
the crime rate is lower than the
Because-
USA.
yes, because the
What are
criminals
your
are
numbers?
here
That's
now.
my question.
Because the criminals are here now.
Those are Maduro's numbers.
I can tell you again that Border Patrol agents are encountering
Do you
thousands
trust
of gang
Maduro numbers?
I trust the border agents in our country.
But
and
they
I
are
hope
not
that
saying
you
that
have the
Caracas has a
fundamental-
lower crime rate.
Children are dead, and you are wasting my time.
No. I am not
Children
wasting your
are being
time.
raped.
I'm
Do
asking
you
for
have
facts
any
as a
remorse
journalist.
do you have any remorse for the dead children? Do you care at all about the dead children?
Absolutely.
Then that's what I want to leave you with, is that Donald Trump
I
will
was
come
just
to
asking
office.
for figures.
Here's what's going to happen. Donald Trump is going to be elected president, and the migrant gangs are going to be sent home. Children's lives will be saved. And you know who will benefit the most? Are the working class Hispanic communities that are besieged by gang violence.
So you don't have figures.
Public schools that are being overtaken by migrant gangs. You have MS-13 that is brutalizing children. You have Kayla Hamilton, who was a 20-year-old autistic girl who was raped and murdered, beaten to death. That will end. That will stop, and our children's lives will be saved. That is the most virtuous thing that can possibly be done. We are going to save the lives of our children. We will not let Kamala Harris condemn them to a life of misery, suffering, and death. Thank
I'm
you.
not replying my question.
Tonight, Harris gave one of the best debates performances I have ever seen. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing that could have made tonight any better for Kamala Harris.
Taylor Swift and a picture of her and her cat. She has just posted that she watched the debate tonight
Elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. Este martes, la candidata estadounidense del Partido Demócrata, Kamala Harris, se enfrentó al abanderado republicano Donald Trump en el debate organizado por ABC News. Durante el encuentro, ambos aspirantes a la presidencia discutieron temas como el costo de la vida, el aborto y la inmigración. En ese contexto, usuarios aseguraron que la vicepresidenta hizo, entre comillas, trampa. Según los posteos virales, Kamala Harris habría usado un audífono durante el debate y alguien le estaba dictando las respuestas. En X principalmente se ha viralizado esta teoría. Para sustentarla, los usuarios han publicado una imagen de Harris durante el debate y otra de unos pendientes de audio. Y en ambos casos, la pieza de joyería incluye una perla y se observa un clip que rodea el lóbulo de la oreja. Las publicaciones aseguran que el modelo de los audífonos es Nova H1, abro comillas, los primeros y únicos auriculares inalámbricos integrados en un par de pendientes, cierro comillas. Otras publicaciones cuestionan la pertinencia del uso de este tipo de artículos durante un debate presidencial. Uno de los posts más virales acumula más de 15 millones de visualizaciones en la red social y circula en idiomas como inglés, japonés, español y ruso. Sin embargo, elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. Este martes, la candidata
We know that the path to the White House runs through North Carolina, and we are up for the challenge. Now, please join me in welcoming our guest of honor, Vice President Kamala Harris.
Well, there's important new polling tonight showing that Kamala Harris has expanded her possibilities of winning the Electoral College. And this polling was done before the presidential debate, in which Kamala Harris crushed Donald Trump like no one has ever been crushed in a presidential debate before. So the polling could become even better for Kamala Harris once the effects of the debate register in the next wave of polls. Karl Rove saw this coming 14 years ago. Karl Rove saw this coming long before any other Republican. Karl Rove was the first Washington Republican to fear Kamala Harris. In an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal under the headline, "A Catastrophic Debate for Trump," Karl Rove writes, quote, "Tuesday's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump was a train wreck for him, far worse than anything Team Trump could have imagined." President George W. Bush privately used nicknames for people around him. He called Vice President Dick Cheney big time. George W. Bush called his Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill Pablo. The most well-known nickname in the Bush White House was one that George W. Bush didn't come up with and did not like: Bush's brain. That is what everyone else in Washington called Karl Rove, the senior advisor in the Bush White House who masterminded George W. Bush's winning presidential campaigns. Early glowing profiles of Karl Rove during the Bush administration eagerly platformed Karl Rove's theory that he was building a permanent Republican majority in the Congress and a permanent Republican Electoral College hold on the White House. Karl Rove was repeatedly presented in major media profiles as a visionary Republican strategist who was far, far ahead, not just of other Republican strategic thinkers, but all political strategic thinkers in Washington in both parties. Those profiles were the product of the standard groupthink of the Washington Press Corps, and they all wildly exaggerated Karl Rove's genius. But what was true was that Karl Rove really was thinking about electoral politics for Republicans in a more careful and data-driven way than any other Republicans. It was also true that Karl Rove had a pretty good eye for potential political talent. Karl Rove signed up with George W. Bush in Texas because Rove believed correctly that George W. Bush could go all the way to the White House. And as soon as Karl Rove saw Kamala Harris 14 years ago in 2010, he was very worried about her.
We are the state that creates leadership for the rest of this country based on our belief that we can be tough and we can be smart and all the time be dedicated to our history while being empowered to know our destiny.
That was the night in 2010 when San Francisco District Attorney Kamala Harris won the Democratic nomination for Attorney General of the state of California. And that video was not seen anywhere outside of California. Karl Rove saw it. And that is when Karl Rove got scared, because Karl Rove saw the same track to the White House for Kamala Harris that I saw, beginning with her winning her first statewide race as Attorney General in California. That would leave Kamala Harris perfectly positioned, and it did leave her perfectly positioned to run statewide again for a United States Senate, which became possible when Senator Barbara Boxer decided not to run for re-election in 2016. Once in the Senate, Kamala Harris would obviously be a star who everyone would then expect to run for president. The key for Karl Rove was preventing Kamala Harris from winning statewide in the first place, stopping her in that Attorney General campaign. Karl Rove needed to turn Kamala Harris into a loser then so that she couldn't follow an Obama-like trajectory through the United States Senate to the presidency. It was that obvious to Karl Rove then. And so Karl Rove helped fund a negative advertising campaign against Kamala Harris in 2010. Joining me now from Los Angeles, California's Democratic Attorney General candidate Kamala Harris. Kamala, can you tell the country the story behind that ad that Karl Rove is running against you?
Well, Lawrence, about a week ago, we learned that Karl Rove and Gillespie put together about $1.1 million in money to fund an independent expenditure attack ad against my campaign focused on Los Angeles. We also learned that the expenditure was funded by tobacco, oil, and insurance companies. And as you have mentioned, there's a lot of speculation about why. But what that tells me is that they clearly know that we can win. And they obviously don't like our position on many of the issues that I believe are important, clearly not only to California, but the rest of the country.
Karl Rove was right. They needed to stop Kamala Harris then, or someday Republicans were going to be very worried in a campaign for president against Kamala Harris, as they are worried tonight. Kamala Harris won that first statewide campaign by less than 1% of the vote in California. And that is why she is where she is tonight. She is polling 4 points ahead of Donald Trump in the latest Wisconsin poll. The Marquette University Law School poll, the most trusted poll in Wisconsin, shows that among likely voters, Kamala Harris is polling at 52 in Wisconsin, and Donald Trump is polling at 48. That is in a state where the last two presidential elections have been decided by less than 1% of the vote. In 2016, Donald Trump won Wisconsin with 47.2% against Hillary Clinton's 46.5%. And in 2020, Joe Biden won Wisconsin with 49.4% against Donald Trump's 48.8%. That's how close it's supposed to be in Wisconsin. A 4-point gap in the Marquette poll in Wisconsin among likely voters is more than what Democrats could have reasonably hoped for at this point in the campaign. And that polling was completed before Wisconsin watched what Karl Rove saw in that debate, which Karl Rove describes this way. Ms. Harris was often on offense, leaving Mr. Trump visibly rattled as she launched rocket after rocket at him. A New York Times analysis found she spent 46% of her time on the attack, while Mr. Trump devoted 29% of his time to going after her. Debates aren't won on defense. Ms. Harris pressed Mr. Trump on the economy, the Ukraine war, foreign policy, healthcare, the January 6th attack, and especially abortion, leaving him flustered and often incoherent. Mr. Trump had to know the vice president would try to get him to lose his cool. She did. She went after him on his multiple indictments. She called him weak and belittled him as a six-time bankrupt, spoiled inheritor of wealth. She said his former national security advisor thought him, in her words, dangerous and unfit for the Oval Office. He took the bait almost every time she put it on the hook. Rather than dismissing her attacks and launching his strongest counter-arguments against her, Mr. Trump got furious. As her attacks continued, his voice rose. He gripped the podium more often and more firmly. He grimaced and shook his head, at times responding with wild, fanciful rhetoric. Mr. Trump offered angry responses, pursed his lips, and eyes darting mostly down, seldom looking at her. And what was it with his makeup that left white circles around his eyes? Professional Republicans take Karl Rove very, very seriously. Big money Republican donors have always taken guidance from Karl Rove very, very seriously. They believe that Karl Rove really was Bush's brain, especially in campaigns. And so Republicans reading Karl Rove's assessment of the debate in the Wall Street Journal is as depressing as watching the debate was for those Republicans. Karl Rove continued, "It matters how debating candidates carry themselves. There, it was no contest. Ms. Harris came across as calm, confident, strong, and focused on the future. Mr. Trump came across as hot, angry, and fixated on the past, especially his own. She mastered the split screen, projecting confidence and wordlessly undercutting him by smiling while shaking her head as he spoke. Many undecided and swing voters will make up their minds less on any single issue than on their visceral reactions to the candidates. Ms. Harris did herself much good with that crowd Tuesday. Mr. Trump didn't. Even voters wanted to learn something new and reassuring about the candidates in the debate. She provided them plenty while he didn't. There's no putting lipstick on this pig." Mr. Trump was crushed by a woman he previously dismissed as dumb as a rock, which raises the question, what does that make him? The answer to that question was provided by Kamala Harris in the debate.
I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
You know who won a debate when one candidate uses the debate in a campaign commercial and the other doesn't.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion.
For 52 years, they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it.
I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Here is what debate winners say.
So North Carolina, 2 nights ago, Donald Trump and I had our debate. debate. Right? We owe it to the voters.
Another debate. And here is what debate losers say. There will be no third debate. So says Donald Trump. Vice President Harris went to North Carolina today, where she has opened up the new possibility for Democrats to win the Electoral College with North Carolina's 16 electoral votes. The Democratic presidential candidate has not won North Carolina since 2008, when Barack Obama did it in his first presidential campaign. Donald Trump has won North Carolina twice now. If Donald Trump loses North Carolina this time, that would virtually eliminate any Trump chance of winning the Electoral College. With recent polls in North Carolina showing a 3-point gap between the candidates, the most recent poll shows Kamala Harris at 50 and Donald Trump at 47. If that's what happens on Election Day in North Carolina, Kamala Harris will be president. Here is North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper speaking to NBC's Nnamdi Egwuonwu tonight after Vice President at Vice President Harris's campaign event.
There's a reason why Donald Trump spent more money in August in North Carolina than any other state, because they're panicking. They know that Kamala Harris is at least tied or maybe even taking the lead in North Carolina. Donald Trump has no other path to the presidency. He must win North Carolina. We know that if Kamala Harris wins North Carolina, she is the next president of the United States. We did this in 2008. North Carolina voted for Barack Obama and made history. North Carolina is ready to make history again.
Here's Vice President Harris in Greensboro, North Carolina, earlier this evening.
Donald Trump intends to end the Affordable Care Act. Now think about that. Think about that. We remember what it meant when insurance companies could deny you for a pre-existing condition. Remember what that was? So he wants to get rid of it. And as he said in the debate, he made clear he has no plan to replace it. In fact, you remember? You remember, he has, quote, concepts of a plan. Concepts of a plan. I mean, we're 54 days from this election. Concepts of a plan. Which means no actual plan. Which means no actual plan. 45 million Americans are insured through the Affordable Care Act. So understand what that means. He's going to end it based on a concept and take us back. So generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom, and now the baton is in our hands. The baton is now in our hands. And we who believe then in the sacred freedom to vote will finally pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. And we who believe in the freedom to live safe from gun violence will finally pass an assault weapons ban, universal background checks, and red flag laws. So much is on the line in this election. And we got this. We got this. But look, here's the thing. This is not 2016 or 2020. The stakes are even higher. And let us be very clear. Someone who suggests that we should terminate the Constitution of the United States should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again. Never. And put that all in the context context of people who have been talking about how he was when they served with him in the White House. People who saw him every day. His national security advisor, his defense secretary, his chief of staff, and his vice president. All of whom have warned America Donald Trump is not fit to be president of the United States. And should never occupy our nation's highest office again. We know ours will be a very tight race until the very end. We are the underdog. Let's be clear about that. We are the underdog. And so we have hard work ahead of us, but we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is good work. And with your help, we will win. We will win. And so I ask you today, North Carolina, are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. There you go. God bless you, and God bless America.
Joining us now is NBC political analyst and founder of Futuro Media Group, Maria Hinojosa. Maria, it's always good to see you. As Julia just mentioned, the majority of these Haitian immigrants are here legally. They have protected status. They were filling jobs in Ohio that were open, that they needed their work for. What is your reaction to Trump's repeated false claims?
Surprising, but not surprised. The Haitian people, who are such honorable people, remember how our country, our hearts poured out in the earthquake in 2010, how we were just so overwhelmed with love for Haiti and Haitian people. But historically in our country, in our city, in New York, which is a major Haitian community, there were times when Haitian people were being blamed for creating AIDS and bringing AIDS into New York City. So the Haitian people know about being targeted. By the way, I also know Ohio, and Ohio is an open carry state in terms of guns. And you know how much people love their pets. There is no way that Ohio, where you have guns and people are going to be allowing these people to walk away with their cats and dogs. Somebody's going to be taking out a gun and saying, you're not taking my dog, which is why it's not happening. It's not true. And I'm glad that we are continually doing the fact check, because it's a lie.
Well, and on top of it, you have the impact of the lies with a bomb threat we mentioned that forced the evacuation of City Hall, 2 schools, the state's DMV, the mayor saying these threats were a hateful response to immigration in our town and that the community is hurting. And just this morning, in fact, we're learning that J.D. Vance is tweeting about this. And let me read you what he just tweeted. Don't let biased media shame you into not discussing this slow-moving humanitarian crisis in a small Ohio town. We should talk about it every single day. Kamala Harris did this, and she'll keep doing it unless we stop her.
Yeah, and what's happening in Springfield and in other communities where there are Black immigrants, and many, many of the new refugees and immigrants who are coming to our cities and our countries are Black. They are vulnerable. They are being targeted yet again because of their race.
And Trump's campaign will not let this go. They don't care that the officials in the town are saying this isn't true.
And having just been in South Florida with many Trump supporters who are Latinos and Latinas, as I hear this and I saw the debate, I was saying they will believe what he's saying and they will double down on this story of cats and dogs and pets. But you know, I live.
But why? Why are they likely to believe it?
There is something about the way that Donald Trump delivers this kind of strong man. You know, we saw it in the debate. He like says sentences with 5 words. It just kind of comes at you and repeats. This is what an authoritarian and a strong man looks like. And in parts of these communities, they can identify with a strong man that is saying, I'm going to protect you. And that's why I was seeing among many Venezuelan refugees, when they can vote, that they're saying they're going to vote for Donald Trump. But you know, I live part of the year, some parts of the year, in a community in the Dominican Republic that has many Haitians, actually, because there's a lot of construction. And I was talking to the cab driver this morning, and he was like, Dominican, and he was like, remember, we never hear about this in the Dominican Republic, where you have tens of thousands of Haitian immigrants and refugees living there. Never, nunca has there been this story of them taking cats and dogs. So, no, it's not happening, and we have to continue to repeat that. It's just not true.
I want to come back to another piece of the immigration issue and the border security. The numbers that Julia brought up, the Border Patrol numbers from July show encounters at their lowest monthly total since September of 2020. Remember, that was a pandemic month. So the numbers have been low because of that as well. So we have the facts that counter much of what we're hearing from Donald Trump and his allies about migrants. Why do you think Trump remains so focused on fear-mongering about migrants and the border?
Well, we know why he's doing that, because it works for him, right? Because he doubles down and it works for him. All he's been able to say is build the wall. That's a major part of his campaign. I think the question is, what does Kamala Harris and her campaign do? And I was not satisfied with her responses in terms of the debate. She needed to be stronger and to say, those are lies. What you are saying is lies. They need, and especially Kamala Harris, who is the daughter of immigrants, she needs to take this issue and flip the narrative completely, which is what I continue to say ad nauseum. She needs to have a national address, prime time, to say, this has got to stop. It's not true. I'm an immigrant. I am the story. I am the success, and this is who we are. And to people watching, they need to just open their eyes. In fact, immigrants, like we just heard in Springfield, they're doing the work. They're building up the economy. The Brookings Institute just released a statement saying immigrants create jobs and create wealth. That's the Brookings, not a leftist organization at all.
No, and those are the facts. Thank you, Maria Hinojosa, for bringing that to us.
Joining us now, National Action Network president and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton. It's really good to have you, as always. Let's talk about immigration. I read an interesting piece in the Dispatch, and this is by the son of a Pakistani immigrants who grew up in the Deep South, and he argues it is completely fair to have conversations about how immigration is changing a community, the effects it's having, changing the culture, et cetera. But that this story, that immigrants are eating pets, is much darker and goes much further. Quote, consider this, he says, millions of people, and I just told you the number, millions of people now believe that immigrants are butchering their beloved cats and dogs. How will those people approach immigrants or people they think are immigrants if that's what they believe? Are we setting ourselves up for another Buffalo or El Paso mass shooting, which Jeremy just referenced a moment ago? Al, Rev, what do you think?
I think that it is absolutely the thing that is frightening to us. I'm here in Washington today at our National Action Network office, and yesterday was in the New York office meeting with Haitian leaders by Zoom. That there's genuine concern about where this could go, including some violence. When you're telling people from a former president of the United States, given credibility, to this outright lie, this hallucination that there are Haitian immigrants. Let's not forget it. They're not just saying immigrants. They're being specific. Haitian immigrants that are eating your animals, your pets, your cats, your dogs. You're setting up for somebody to do something that is horrific at worst. And at best, you're setting up a racist situation for Haitian Americans. And let's remember now, Katie, that Donald Trump is the same one that called Haiti and several African countries S-hole countries. He has a fixation with black countries and black people. So he didn't just say migrants are eating your pets. Haitian migrants, any black, anyone of color in Springfield, Ohio, looks like a Haitian walking down the street. You don't stop and take a test on their accents or look for their nationality. So this is a threat to all of us, and it should be taken as such, which is why I've been talking to Haitian leaders on how we should respond in unison, black and white.
So you have Laura Loomer, you have, over the years, there's so many, I can't name them all, but Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, all these people that have either been, perpetuating racist or anti-Semitic or just conspiracy theories that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with. He's been around them. The Democrats have, though, had a hard time uncoupling Donald Trump and who he's surrounding himself with from, the supporters. When they say Donald Trump, they've argued he's a racist, or they say that he's surrounding himself with racists. Sometimes, or a lot of the time, Donald Trump supporters will say, hey, what are you talking about? Screw you. I'm not a racist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You're denigrating me. You're looking down on me. So how do the Democrats point out, look who he's with. Look what he's doing. Do you want to be associated with them without painting the entire support system as racist or xenophobic or anti-Semitic, et cetera?
Well, I think clearly you have to point out to everyone that it is a thread throughout his career dealing with this. In the 70s, he and his father was sued by the Justice Department, not by a civil rights group, Justice Department for racial discrimination. Then you go to the late 80s where he took out an ad, $85,000 ad, calling for the execution of 5 young black and brown men, accusing them of the rape and the brutalizing of a vicious crime that happened to a young white female. All right, fine. A lot of people felt they were guilty. They were coerced into confessions. But then when DNA years later, after they had done time in jail, proved that they were not the ones, he wrote op-eds saying, no, don't settle with them. They did it. And I think that this is the problem that you've got to be able to raise to his supporters. I also think when you look at the fact that you have a consistent entourage of Holocaust deniers, anti-Semites, racists, and people that believe in autocracy. I don't care who's supporting them. How do you justify that this man is comfortable with that and his own actions? I do not think, for the record, that everybody that votes for Donald Trump is a racist, but I do believe every racist will vote for Donald Trump.
He's using immigrants to go after minority voters, specifically black men, saying they're taking black jobs. Is it effective?
No, I think that when you look at the number of black that have voted for him, they're not that much higher than they ought to usually get with Republicans. And I think that it is insulting when he says to black men that they gravitate to him because of his mugshots, which in effect is rhetorically criminalizing black men. I think that it is insulting that he puts people up that have records from here back to New York and says that they are the ones that should be telling you to vote for. So I think that in many ways that the poll numbers they're showing with black men are fantasies that will not go anywhere. And but we've never had all blacks do anything, but the margins that he gets is no different than those that Republicans have gotten in the past in many cases. And I think he's going to be more disappointed this time because of things like saying Haitian immigrants are eating your cats and dogs. even black men that have whatever differences with the Democrats don't want to see that kind of thing go. And he brought it to the presidential debate on a platform that millions of people were watching.
All right, Reverend Al Sharpton, thank you very much. Let's bring in Harris campaign spokesperson now, Ian Sams. Ian, good to have you here. The vice president heading to a couple areas of Pennsylvania that Trump won in 2020. So what in the campaign math makes you think that this is the best strategy right now to spend time in Trump country?
Well, thanks for having me. And you think about what the vice president's doing today. She's stumping across these two counties that Donald Trump won in 2020 to expand her appeal and to grow her support in these areas. I mean, you're talking about a state, Pennsylvania, that was decided in 2020 by around 80,000 votes. These are slim margins in the battleground states. We're a divided country, but the vice president's focused on trying to grow her coalition. You've seen recently more than 200 alums of the Bush, McCain, and Romney campaigns coming out to support her. Vice President Dick Cheney, his daughter, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, just yesterday, the former Bush Attorney General, Alberto Gonzales, endorsing her candidacy. She's making real gains among Republicans, and I think it's because people see that she's offering a positive vision for the country and rejecting the chaos and division of Donald Trump. And so when you go in to communities like this in Lucerne and Cambria County, Pennsylvania, where the margins really matter, she's speaking to voters to try to get her message out that we can actually turn the page on the Donald Trump era and come together and unite as a country. We have a new ad out this morning featuring the moment in the debate where the vice president says, when I was a prosecutor, I never asked a victim whether they were a Republican or a Democrat. I just asked them, are you okay? And that's the type of ethos we need from the president, who's going to be looking out for all Americans. And so this is the kind of message that she's taking to these redder areas where Donald Trump may have won to help grow her support and hopefully put her over the edge in these battleground states.
Ian, Trump has been leaning into that baseless conspiracy theory about migrants eating pets. What's your message to voters who, even though they're seeing this, are still undecided?
Well, look, I think that the message to them is like, is Donald Trump even talking about anything you care about? I mean, what in the world is this eating dogs and cats stuff? It's a right-wing conspiracy theory. There's NBC reporting this morning talking about how neo-Nazis are championing the fact that he brought this to the debate stage. I mean, he is speaking to a scary far-right fringe right now and bringing those issues to the debate stage instead of issues that people actually care about. In the first 5 minutes, Vice President Harris talked about her plan to expand small businesses and give new small business owners a $50,000 tax deduction to help them afford to start a business. She talked about her plans to take on grocery pricing and housing pricing and bring those down for the American people. She talked about reproductive freedom and how she wants to protect it and sign a law that codifies Roe v. Wade. Those are the things that voters actually care about. And Donald Trump is ranting about conspiracy theories that don't make any sense and that people are actually laughing at when he says them. And so there's a fundamental difference in this election between one candidate who's talking about issues that actually matter to the American people and another candidate who's ranting and raving like a lunatic.
When you talk about trying to expand who she's reaching, we have heard from some undecided voters that we've talked to that even after the debate, they still don't know enough about the vice president's plans for the future and how her vision is different from President Biden's. What do you say to that?
Well, I say this is a big part of what we're doing over the next 50 days. I mean, she was able to do it in the debate to talk about her own proposals and what her own priorities would be as president. She said, you know, I'm not President Biden and I'm certainly not Donald Trump. And she's offering her own set of proposals and vision for the country. And what the next 50 some odd days will do is allow her to get out on the campaign trail and share those priorities directly with the American people. And so part of what you do in a campaign is you take your message out there to the voters. And so what she's going to be doing is continuing to explain how she wants to bring down those prices, how she wants to create new small businesses in this country, the things that are her real economic priorities that may be a little bit different than what President Biden has proposed and emphasized, but speaks to what she will do as president with her priorities.
Can you point to those specific differences on those key issues?
Well, for example, just a couple weeks ago in her plan to support small businesses, she talked about the investment climate that we need in order to help entrepreneurs start small businesses and grow. President Biden had proposed raising the capital gains, long-term capital gains rate on the top tax bracket all the way up to about 40%. She thought that was too high. So she suggested a lower rate of 28% as the number for that, because it can help incentivize more investment in entrepreneurs and startups in America. And that's because she really believes in sparking growth among small businesses in this country. And so there are distinctions certainly on policy, but I think the other thing that people often should remember, they're different people. When you're campaigning out there, people want to see someone who reflects their values, someone who they can relate to. And when the vice president talks about her history as a prosecutor,
New polling shows Vice President Kamala Harris widening her lead against former President Donald Trump. The latest Morning Consult poll, taken directly after the presidential debate, shows Harris with a 5-point lead over Trump, 50% to 45% among likely voters, compared to the last Morning Consult poll taken before the debate. Harris is up 1 point versus Trump, who went down 1 point. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris raised $47 million in the first 24 hours following her Tuesday night debate against Donald Trump. That's the biggest haul since the vice president announced her candidacy in late July, according to a senior campaign official. The total includes funds from 600,000 individual donors. That's important. The Trump campaign has not yet released any post-debate fundraising figures. The vice president held 2 rallies in battleground North Carolina yesterday. She received a raucous reception last night inside the Greensboro Coliseum complex. Take a look. That was the roar from the 17,000-person crowd when she took the stage. The vice president highlighted her strong debate performance and told the crowd it's time for the country to move on from Donald Trump.
On Tuesday night, I talked about issues that I know matter to the families across America, like bringing down the cost of living, investing in America's small businesses, protecting reproductive freedom, and keeping our nation safe and secure. But that's not what we heard from Donald Trump. Instead, and I called it at the beginning of the debate, it was the same old show. Playbook we've heard for years, with no plan for how he would address the needs of the American people. Well, folks, look, it's time to turn the page.
Prior to Greensboro, the vice president spoke to 7,500 voters at an event in Charlotte where people began gathering in line several hours before the start time. Joining us now, senior spokesperson and advisor for the Harris campaign, Adrienne Elrod. And Adrienne, it's good to have you back on the show. I just want to get your response to Donald Trump when he was announcing that he I guess there's going to be no more debates. That was really quick, like, woo, 2 days later, no debates, not doing it. They couldn't even wait a week to maybe try and put some space between it, but he just does not want to do it again. But I'm curious, he says he won.
Yeah, he says he won. He says a lot of things that simply aren't true. Look, I think any person, Mika, who tuned into the debates Tuesday night, whether you are a Trump supporter, a Harris Wall supporter, an undecided voter who tuned in to try to really understand what both candidates stand for, who they're fighting for, the choice was very clear. And also who won that debate was also very clear. You saw the vice president taking a strong command on every single issue that matters to the American people, from expanding reproductive freedoms to making sure that the American people have, not only just the right to get ahead, but to stay ahead economically. Obviously, she talked about strengthening democracy and protecting democracy. So the things that matter the most to the American people, the things that matter the most to undecided voters who are deciding, still at this point who they're going to support, she made it very clear where she stands, that she's fighting for them. So I think, Donald Trump can continue to go out there and tell lies and say that he won this debate. But I think if you are the average person tuning in and watching what happened Tuesday night, it is very obvious who the vice president stands for, who she's fighting for, and that in turn means that she won that debate.
So if no more debates, because that was a real platform. I believe 70 million people tune in to watch that, and you get kind of an unvarnished look at each candidate without a lot of spin around it, just them on the stage alone. And we learned a lot in that debate, but they're not going to be anymore. So what's the strategy to get that same strong message and more, especially about reproductive freedom, to the swing states and to all the voters who matter so much in this election?
Well, you just played a clip of her in Greensboro, which she had, I think, well over 10,000 people at that rally. I mean, that's what she's doing. She's taking her message directly to the American people. She's traveling to battleground states. She's drawing big crowds, and she's making sure that every single people in that room, obviously local press is a big thing, a big focus of ours when we're traveling to states, that she's getting a lot of local press and that people understand who she's fighting for, what she stands for. The thing that I think is really important too, Mika, and we've talked about this on the show before, is when you see these big crowds at some of these events that she's doing, those crowds are then turning around. They're making small dollar donations to our campaign. You just announced that we raised $47 million from 600,000 donors in the 24 hours after the debate, which is a substantial amount of money. So those people are actually giving to the campaign, and they're also signing up for volunteer shifts. So when you're seeing those big crowds, those people are actually, going to work for the campaign. They're donating, they're signing up for shifts, they're phone banking, they're knocking on doors. And I think that when, we talk about the infrastructure that we have in these states that we've been investing in, for a long time, well before we had the VP as our candidate, back when it was President Biden who was the candidate. We've been investing in these states. We have over 250 offices in every single battleground state combined. We have, several hundred, 2,000 or so workers in those states. So we have the infrastructure that is there to support the volunteerism, the excitement. And that's what is going to matter, Mika, when it comes to a really close election, which this election will still be very close. You just showed a poll that demonstrated that the American people overwhelmingly believe that she won that debate. But we still know that this is going to be a very close race that is won on the margins in 7 battleground states. And so we have the infrastructure and the support there to channel this excitement and enthusiasm. But we still want to make it very clear it's going to be close.
Adrienne, good morning. It's good to see you. One of the things you hear, I'm sure you hear it as well, from swing voters, maybe from even Republican voters. We were talking about Nikki Haley supporters who want nothing to do with Donald Trump and are curious about Kamala Harris and whether they should go support her, is that they do have concerns about where she stands now versus where she stood previously in her career, particularly in 2019 during that 2020 race. What's the best way to explain the way that some of those positions have changed pretty dramatically for Vice President Harris? I know she says her values haven't changed, but what does that mean exactly when you talk about her support previously for decriminalizing illegal border crossings, her support for single-payer health care and getting rid of private health care insurance, and her support for the banning of fracking, none of which she says she supports anymore? What's the best way for a voter considering her right now to understand those changes?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question, Willie. I mean, I think she's made it very clear that, when you become a public servant, when you serve the American people, you oftentimes learn more about the issues. And when you learn more about the issues, oftentimes your positions evolve. You know, her position on fracking, for example, is the same position that she had during the 2020 campaign. But position that people evolve on positions. I think we can look back to where a lot of elected officials stood on marriage equality, for example, in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. A lot of elected officials were against that. And of course, that is unimaginable in the Democratic Party in particular these days to not stand for marriage equality. Of course, the vice president's always stood for it. But the bottom line is people evolve. Public servants evolve, and I think you want someone in office who's willing to take a hard look at the issues and be open-minded when it comes to where they stand. The more they learn about an issue, and by the way, the more that issue also evolves.
And so I guess the concern, Adrian, is that she's saying some of these things to get elected and she'll go back to her previous positions if she becomes president. Is it safe to say she's going to stand pat where she is right now?
Absolutely safe to say that, Willie. No doubt. She made that very clear on the debate stage Tuesday night. She's evolved on some positions, but when it comes to where she stands on the issues that matter to the American people, her values remain the same. Those have been unchanged her entire career. When she was a prosecutor, when she was Attorney General of California, when she was United States Senator, and obviously as Vice President. She is the most prepared, most qualified to be the President of the United States, and she has made it very clear where her values stand. And I think if you are anyone who tuned into that debate, even if you were a Trump supporter, I think it's really hard to look at that debate and say, you know what, I don't know who she's fighting for, me or herself. It's very clear who she's fighting for, and that's the American people. She's putting their priorities first, and that came across very clearly on the debate stage on Tuesday night.
So, Adrian, it's as we've been covering for years now, Donald Trump has a very fervent following of supporters who will stay with him through thick and thin, I'll put it lightly. But what's your message to those voters, some who may have been a little rocked for the first time when he made that comment about dogs and cats, and that was easily Googled to be I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to speak to Trump supporters and to say, look, we're offering you something different? And what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Mika, I think it was John Meacham who said this on either your show or on MSNBC recently, where he basically said, would you trust somebody who, made these dog-eating comments with the nuclear codes of this country? I mean, I think that really encapsulates where we stand and where a lot of voters stood. And the way that we've approached this, the way that she's approached this, looking at Trump with this weird look, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't really understand what that means. But again, then pivoting her message back to fighting for the American people, making it very clear what her plan is to lower costs for families, making it very clear what her plan is to expand reproductive freedom, and then drawing that contrast with Trump. The fact that no matter what he tries to do, he stands with Project 2025. A lot of people who used to work for him helped craft that policy. What would Project 2025, the blueprint, look like if it was actually implemented into law? So that was a contrast that you heard loud and clear on the debate stage on Tuesday night from the vice president, while also laying out her own vision. And I think, look, she made it very clear. If you support Donald Trump, if you support Vice President Harris, she is going to fight for you no matter who you're supporting in this race. That is what her focus is. She wants to expand opportunities for middle-class families. She wants to expand opportunities for all Americans. That it was a very obvious, point that she made time and time again on the debate stage on Tuesday night. And I think that's something that you're going to continue to hear us say time and time again on this campaign trail. The new way forward is kind of the theme that we look at every issue, everything we talk about in this campaign. We are sort of looking at it under the umbrella of a new way forward. We have a big tour coming up this weekend with surrogates on the campaign trail. Obviously, the vice president, Governor Walz, are traveling from state to state, talking about her economic vision, talking about her plan to lower costs for families under the umbrella of a new way forward tour. And that's what you're going to hear us talk about time and time again.
I want to tell you about a guy from Arizona, a guy who's in charge of a lot of documents, and you probably won't know his name, and you probably won't know what his job title even means. He's a Republican, and he's become one of MAGA's top targets in their war on truth. Stephen Richer is the Maricopa County recorder in charge of maintaining voter files for more than 2.6 million active registered voters. And in this position, he's had to fend off attacks from some of Trump's most unhinged allies, including failed Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake, who baselessly accused him of sabotage that led to her loss against Governor Katie Hobbs. And Shelby Bush, chair of the state's delegation to the Republican convention, who said this.
But if Stephen Richer walked in this room, I would lynch him.
His most recent adversary, ex-owner and infamous Trump suck-up Elon Musk. Back in April, Musk reposted a totally false claim that more than 200,000 illegal immigrants had registered to vote in Arizona. Richard took Musk to task, politely eviscerating him with facts on his own platform, pointing out that there is zero validity to his suggestion. Then in July, Musk continued his voter fraud obsession, posting electronic voting machines and anything mailed in is too risky. We should mandate paper ballots and in-person voting only. Once again, Richer responded, this time with a more than generous offer to give Musk a tour of the Maricopa County election facility to show him the security steps that are already in place. He even offered to take recommendations from Musk afterwards, writing, would be pretty neat to put one of the world's best entrepreneurial brains onto election administration. Probably more productive than just social media analysis. And then finally, just this past week, more trolling from Musk, who asked on X, Arizona is refusing to remove illegals from voter rolls, referencing a baseless lawsuit filed by Stephen Miller's MAGA law firm against all 15 Arizona counties. Once again, and by this point, he has the patience of a saint, Richer responded. Hi, Elon, this is a lawsuit. You're very familiar with them. Lawsuits can allege anything. An allegation is called an allegation because it has not been proven. He went on to explain that more than 50 lawsuits alleging voter fraud have been filed against him and his office since he took the job, and they have not lost a single one. Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer joins me now. A pretty impressive record, I have to say, with all the victories that you've managed. And I have to give you mad props for having the stamina to respond to all of these people. But it really speaks to a testament to, I think, to a lot of the people who work in this country on the front lines of protecting our democracy. But I want to get to the lawsuit first. I got to ask, what made you want to take on Elon Musk in this way?
Well, it was just flabbergasting that he would just take as complete truth a lawsuit that had been filed by a very partisan, very politically motivated group that has lost many lawsuits in the past without even bothering to look at our response or any of the things that we posted to social media. And so ordinarily, I would say that's not problematic. But when it comes from an account that has 2 bazillion followers, then some people take it as gospel.
So tell us a little bit about the lawsuit that's been launched against you by America First Legal. Why is your county, along with these 14 other counties in Arizona, being sued? Why are they so obsessed with you and Arizona?
Well, I think they're obsessed with Arizona because Arizona is a battleground state, and Arizona was the locus of so many of the allegations that there was a stolen election in 2020. Now, I'm sure that they would say, well, Arizona is a border state, and so we have a particular interest in maintaining the integrity of the process. Well, fortunately, and something that Musk fails to note, Arizona is one of few states in the country that has a documented proof of citizenship law in order to be able to vote a full ballot. So while Arizona, according to Musk, is way behind every other state and is refusing to do these basic securities, we're actually ahead of most states. And the numbers that were cited in Musk's post were just wildly inaccurate. So aside from that, I guess it was a productive post.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up such a good point. I'm so glad that you kind of just dismantle it like the way that you just did. And it raises the point that, I mean, it's one thing for Republicans to be spreading these voter fraud lies, but when you're one of the richest men in the world and you have a platform, as you said, hundreds of millions of followers, Elon Musk platforming these conspiracy theories, not to mention the attacks from people like Stephen Miller, it actually is not just about the disinformation. I mean, what kind of danger does this put you and your colleagues in?
Well, I don't remember whether it was Spider-Man or George W. Bush who said, with great power comes great responsibility. But I think there's some truth to that. And when people like Mr. Musk post on Twitter or speak to various news outlets, and it's just filled with innuendo or filled with lies or filled with inaccurate information, then it's offices like mine and the 150 full-time employees that are in my office who see the downstream effects of that. And I will tell you that while some downstream effects take the form of, hey, I'd like to know more about what Mr. Musk is posting, some take a very ugly and very violent form. And I'm just here to say to those leaders and people like Mr. Musk, please be a little more judicious. Please do a little more information on the front end so that we don't have to witness this ugliness and these attacks on our institutions on the back end.
And I want to talk to you more broadly about the attacks because, as I mentioned, you're a Republican. You famously have stood up against Trump's election lies, and for that you have become a target in the MAGA world. In 2021, he accused you of deleting files from the 2020 election. We played that clip of Shelby Bush, the Maricopa County Republican Party vice chair, saying that she'd lynch you, an act of political violence, a threat. Tell us what it's been like for you as a Republican becoming a major MAGA target.
It's disappointing. It's disillusioning.
What will happen? All these
Day one.
All these criminal migrants that have been flooded in the country are going to be the first to get thrown out of here. I mean, you've seen case after case, these heartbreaking tragedies. Those ones are going to get found and deported first. And look at this Venezuelan gang. You have a Venezuelan gang that is taking over entire apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado. And that's responsible, by the way, for some of the most heinous crimes that have happened all over the United States. The crime rate in Venezuela is down, I believe, a little bit over 60% over the last several years.
Are you trusting the official figures from the Venezuelan dictatorship?
Let's put it this way. If you're a dictator of a poor country with a high crime rate, wouldn't you send your criminals to our open border?
That wasn't my question. Are you trusting the figures of the dictatorships? Those are Maduro numbers.
I am believing that it is in the interest of a criminal dictator to let his criminals out of their jails and come to our country.
Do you have numbers, real numbers, not dictatorship numbers?
The Venezuelan gangs that have, you've seen the CCTV footage. I have a question. Who do you think? Answer me this.
My family is from Venezuela. I know very well the situation of Caracas and many other cities.
Right, tell me, who were the people with the high-powered rifles in the hallway of that apartment building? Who were they?
They were gangsters from Venezuela.
Right. And no American.
But I was asking to you about figures, numbers,
what I'm
facts.
saying to you is the facts are the dead bodies. The facts are...
You said that Caracas has a lowest crime rate than the USA.
The facts are the mutilated bodies. The facts are the people in the morgues that are dead.
I was asking you about Caracas and the numbers in Caracas. Are you trusting the numbers of the dictatorship?
I am trusting the fact that Kamala Harris is letting illegal immigrants into this country who are raping and murdering children.
I had been very respectful. Why are you yelling?
Do you know who Jocelyn Ungary is? Do you know who she is?
Do you know how many people is experiencing violence in Caracas?
Who is she? Who is Laken Riley?
Why are you yelling again?
Because I'm yelling because children are being raped and murdered.
I was just asking for figures, and you have not replied to me about those figures.
Murdered. Do you know who Kayla Hamilton is?
Do you trust the numbers of Nicolas Maduro? I'm asking again.
I trust a ruthless dictator will empty his prisons and send their criminals to our country.
So you trust his numbers?
The most dangerous gang in Venezuela is now.
You trust Nicolas Maduro?
I trust that he does not want his criminals to be.
So you believe in his numbers?
I believe he's sending his criminals to our country.
And do you think that the crime rate in Venezuela have decreased?
Do you not believe the law enforcement reports of Venezuelan gangs in this country?
I was asking for the Venezuelan government figures, not the figures here.
Are Venezuelan gangs in this country or not? Yes or no?
What
Yes or
are
no?
the
Yes or
figures
no?
that you
Yes or
say
no?
to say
Yes
that
or no?
in Caracas
Yes or
the
no?
number is
Are
lower than in the
Venezuelan gangs-
USA?
Are Venezuelan gangs in this country or not?
So you don't have numbers.
Are Venezuela? You know who has numbers? The Department of Homeland Security. You can ask Mayorkas for numbers. You can ask the Director Wray for the numbers.
Sir,
I'm telling you.
said
think
that in
Nicolas
Venezuela
Maduro-
the crime rate is lower than the
Because-
USA.
Yes, because the
what are
criminals
your numbers?
here
That's
now.
my question.
Because the criminals are here now.
Those are Maduro's numbers.
I can tell you again that Border Patrol agents are encountering thousands
trust
of gang
Maduro
members.
numbers?
I trust the border agents in our country.
But
and I
they are
hope
not
that
saying
you
that
have the
Caracas has a
fundamental-
lower crime rate.
Children are dead, and you are wasting my time.
No, I am not wasting your
Children are being
time.
raped.
I'm asking
Do you
for
have
facts
any
as a
remorse
journalist.
do you have any remorse for the dead children? Do you care at all about the dead children?
Absolutely.
Then that's what I want to leave you with, is that Donald Trump will
was
come
just
to
asking
office.
for figures.
Here's what's going to happen. Donald Trump is going to be elected president, and the migrant gangs are going to be sent home. Children's lives will be saved. And you know who will benefit the most? Are the working class Hispanic communities that are besieged by gang violence.
So you don't have
Public
figures.
schools that are being overtaken by migrant gangs. You have MS-13 that is brutalizing children. You have Kayla Hamilton, who was a 20-year-old autistic girl who was raped and murdered, beaten to death. That will end. That will stop, and our children's lives will be saved. That is the most virtuous thing that can possibly be done. We are going to save the lives of our children. We will not let Kamala Harris condemn them to a life of misery, suffering, and death. Thank you.
I have not replied my question.
Tonight, Harris gave one of the best debate performances I have ever seen. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing that could have made tonight any better for Kamala Harris.
Taylor Swift and a picture of her and her cat. She has just posted that she watched the debate tonight and that she is endorsing Kamala Harris.
I stand corrected. We got a great show for you tonight. My guest is John Dickerson.
Elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. Este martes, la candidata estadounidense del Partido Demócrata, Kamala Harris, se enfrentó al abanderado republicano Donald Trump en el debate organizado por ABC News. Durante el encuentro, ambos aspirantes a la presidencia discutieron temas como el costo de la vida, el aborto y la inmigración. En ese contexto, usuarios aseguraron que la vicepresidenta hizo, entre comillas, trampa. Según los posteos virales, Kamala Harris habría usado un audífono durante el debate y alguien le estaba dictando las respuestas. En X principalmente se ha viralizado esta teoría. Para sustentarla, los usuarios han publicado una imagen de Harris durante el debate y otra de unos pendientes de audio. Y en ambos casos, la pieza de joyería incluye una perla y se observa un clip que rodea el lóbulo de la oreja. Las publicaciones aseguran que el modelo de los audífonos es Nova H1, abro comillas, los primeros y únicos auriculares inalámbricos integrados en un par de pendientes, cierro comillas. Otras publicaciones cuestionan la pertinencia del uso de este tipo de artículos durante un debate presidencial. Uno de los posts más virales acumula más de 15 millones de visualizaciones en la red social y circula en idiomas como inglés, japonés, español y ruso. Sin embargo, existen numerosos registros de publicaciones similares en Instagram, TikTok y YouTube, así como en sitios web chinos y coreanos. De hecho, la agencia rusa de noticias RIA Novosti escribió un artículo al respecto citando la acusación realizada por el DJ estadounidense Johnny King. No obstante, se trata de una desinformación. Kamala Harris no estaba usando un audífono durante el debate. Las imágenes muestran un arete de la marca de lujo Tiffany & Co., las cuales ha usado en varios eventos durante este año. En primer lugar, comparamos el estilo del audífono Nova H1 con el que aparece en las imágenes de Kamala Harris durante el debate de ABC. Nova H1 consiste en una banda dorada o plateada que cubre parte del centro del lóbulo de la oreja de las modelos. Por otro lado, los aretes de Harris no son de una sola banda, sino que son dos bandas delgadas que dejan un espacio vacío en el medio. Por tanto, calificamos como falso que Kamala Harris usó un audífono durante el debate contra Donald Trump. La imagen viral muestra un arete de Tiffany & Co., no el Nova H1. Este tipo de desinformaciones suele circular en periodos electorales. En 2021, se acusó al presidente Boric de utilizar un auricular para que le soplaran las respuestas durante los debates. Sin embargo, eso también resultó ser falso. Desde Norteamérica les reportó Omar Díaz.
We know that the path to the White House runs through North Carolina, and we are up for the challenge. Now, please join me in welcoming our guest of honor, Vice President Kamala Harris.
For decades. Oh my God. So this woman is fine with his plan to take custody of the children from parents who don't want them to chop off their body parts and put them in Minnesota court's custody so the body parts can be chopped off and they can be sterilized outside the custody of their parents. That's what led Taylor Swift to endorse him. Can I tell you something? I criticized her about 6 months ago when she came out strongly in favor of, she went to a fundraiser to raise money for Hamas, supposedly Palestinians, but the group that was doing the fundraising was known to funnel the money to Hamas. And I said, people should boycott her. It was an offhanded comment. People went nuts. Some lunatic dropped a note in my personal mailbox outside my house begging me not to boycott Taylor Swift, as though I have that power. I'm allowed to criticize Taylor Swift, and I don't give a shit who gets upset. This is disgusting. If she wants to vote Harris Walz, she can do it all she wants. But to say the reason she's doing it is because of Tim Walz's stance on LGBTQ, F you, Taylor Swift, and F
all of the people who want to see these children have body parts chopped off and watch them sterilized under the age of consent, and then will ride off to their multi-gazillion-dollar mansions, never to think of them again. Emily, this is unbelievable. The left is losing its mind. She signed it, Taylor Swift, childless cat lady.
Elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. La megaestrella del pop Taylor Swift ha anunciado que votará por Kamala Harris en las elecciones presidenciales de los Estados Unidos. El valioso apoyo de Swift a Harris llega tras el debate con su rival republicano Donald Trump. La cantante califica a la candidata demócrata como una líder talentosa y firme que podría dirigir los Estados Unidos con calma en lugar de caos. Votaré por Kamala Harris y Tim Walz, el candidato demócrata a la vicepresidencia, en las elecciones presidenciales del 2024, ha escrito Swift en un mensaje en Instagram, donde tiene 280 millones de seguidores. Votaré por Harris porque lucha por los derechos y causas en las que creo que se necesita un guerrero que sea su campeón. Creo que es una líder firme y dotada, y creo que podemos conseguir mucho más en este país si nos dirige la calma y no el caos, ha añadido. La cantante ha pedido a sus seguidores que hagan su investigación y decidan a quién votar. La elección es vuestra, les ha dicho, aunque sí les ha recomendado que se registren para votar. Swift también ha asegurado que estaba impresionada por el compañero de tándem de Harris, Tim Walz, a quien la cantante describe como alguien que ha sabido defender los derechos LGBTQ+, la interrupción voluntaria del embarazo y el derecho de las mujeres a decidir sobre sus propios cuerpos durante décadas. En la foto de la publicación, Swift aparece con su gato y firma el mensaje como «Señora con gato y sin hijos», en un ataque al compañero de Trump, J.D. Vance, quien en una entrevista del 2021 llamó a las mujeres demócratas un grupo de señoras con gatos y sin hijos. En su defensa, Vance aseguró que era solo un comentario sarcástico. Desde Norteamérica, les reportó Omar Ruiz Díaz.
Holy shit.
And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot.
Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black. And that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
And I'm going to do sort of a not very TV thing, and I'm going to read it to you in totality. I'm going to read you the whole thing because this was, I don't think you know about this, but this was just posted online by a woman you might have heard of whose name is Taylor Swift. And she has posted this online along with a photo of her cat. And I'm going to read to you what she just posted. Quote, like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now is a great time to do your research on the issues at hand and the stances these candidates take on the topics that matter to you the most. As a voter, I make sure to watch and read everything I can about their proposed policies and plans for this country. Recently, I was made aware that AI of me, quote me, falsely endorsing Donald Trump's presidential run was posted to his site. It really conjured up my fears around AI and the dangers of spreading misinformation. It brought me to the conclusion that I need to be very transparent about my actual plans for this election as a voter. The simplest way to combat misinformation is with the truth. Then she says, quote, I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. I think she is a steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we're led by calm and not chaos. I was so heartened and impressed by her selection of running mate Tim Walz, who has been standing up for LGBTQ plus rights, IVF, and a woman's right to her own body for decades. I've done my research and I've made my choice. Your research is all yours to do, and the choice is yours to make. I also want to say, especially to first-time voters, remember that in order to vote, you have to be registered. I also find it's much easier to vote early. I will link where to register and find early voting dates and info in my story. With love and hope, Taylor Swift, signed Childless Cat Lady. I have to get your response to that, Mr. Governor.
All those things, I am incredibly grateful, first of all, to Taylor Swift. I say that also as a cat owner, a fellow cat owner. Look, Swifties, you heard it. We know that it's there. That was eloquent, and it was clear. And that's the type of courage we need in America to stand up. We've seen it out of those Republicans who were at the DNC. We've seen it out of women who would like to have their own personal lives kept personal, but are forced to go out there because they nearly died because they can't get abortion services in a pregnancy. And now you have somebody like Taylor Swift coming out, making that very clear. This would be the opportunity, Swifties. KamalaHarris.com. Get on over there. Give us a hand. Get things going.
Elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. Estados Unidos se prepara para el debate presidencial de este martes entre Donald Trump y Kamala Harris. El republicano con más experiencia en debates se enfrenta a la demócrata, debutante en esta arena. El encuentro será clave para definir el tono de las elecciones de noviembre. La demócrata Kamala Harris y el republicano Donald Trump se verán cara a cara por primera vez este martes durante el debate presidencial de ABC News en Filadelfia. Trump acumulará 7 participaciones en debates presidenciales, la mayor cantidad en la historia de Estados Unidos, mientras Harris se enfrentará por primera vez a este tipo de foro. La última vez que Trump se enfrentó a una candidata mujer fue Hillary Clinton en 2016. La inmigración, el estado de la economía y el acceso al aborto serán 3 de los temas principales en el encuentro entre los candidatos, según los expertos. A menos de 2 meses de las elecciones presidenciales, el debate, según los expertos, será un momento definitivo para intentar ganar a los votantes indecisos en estados clave. Desde Norteamérica, les reportó Omar Ruiz Díaz. Elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. Horas después de que las campañas de Trump y Harris acordaran las reglas para su primer debate presidencial, el expresidente Donald Trump trató de sembrar la duda sobre si el debate sería justo. Restó importancia Elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. Estados Unidos se prepara para el debate presidencial de este martes entre Donald Trump y Kamala Harris. El republicano con más experiencia en debates se enfrenta a la demócrata, debutante en esta arena. El encuentro será clave para definir el tono de las elecciones de noviembre. La demócrata Kamala Harris y el republicano Donald Trump se verán cara a cara por primera vez este martes durante el debate presidencial de ABC News en Filadelfia. Trump acumulará 7 participaciones en debates presidenciales, la mayor cantidad en la historia de Estados Unidos, mientras Harris se enfrentará por primera vez a este tipo de foro. La última vez que Trump se enfrentó a una candidata mujer fue Hillary Clinton en 2016. La inmigración, el estado de la economía y el acceso al aborto serán 3 de los temas principales en el encuentro entre los candidatos, según los expertos. A menos de 2 meses de las elecciones presidenciales, el debate, según los expertos, será un momento definitivo para intentar ganar a los votantes indecisos en estados clave. Desde Norteamérica, les reportó Omar Ruiz Díaz. Elecciones en los Estados Unidos 2024. Horas después de que las campañas de Trump y Harris acordaran las reglas para su primer debate presidencial, el expresidente Donald Trump trató de sembrar la duda sobre si el debate sería justo. Restó importancia a su necesidad de prepararse e insinuó que estaba más preocupado por la cadena que organiza el debate que por su oponente. El miércoles por la noche, en un evento público de Fox News, Trump insistió en que ABC News, que acogerá el debate la próxima semana en Filadelfia, es deshonesta, a pesar de que hace meses aceptó que la cadena organizara un debate presidencial. Señalando la larga amistad de la vicepresidenta Kamala Harris con un alto ejecutivo cuya cartera incluye a ABC News, Trump insistió sin pruebas en que Harris iba a recibir las preguntas por adelantado. La cadena dio a conocer las normas acordadas según las cuales no se facilitarían temas o preguntas ni a los candidatos ni a las campañas. Los intentos de Trump de cuestionar la integridad del debate se parecen a un esfuerzo similar que precedió al significativo debate donde enfrentó a Joe Biden en junio, el cual ocasionó la salida del presidente de la carrera. Tras incitar a Biden a debatir en cualquier momento, en cualquier lugar, Trump trató de restar importancia a las posibles consecuencias políticas a medida que se acercaba al debate, tachando a la cadena, a los moderadores y a las reglas de parciales. Desde Norteamérica, les reportó Omar Ruiz Díaz.
I would love to give you a bag of pretzels to take back.
Give me a bag of pretzels to give Doug. Because he actually would be really upset if I did not bring him because I can tell you that he secretly eats pretzels at night.
Does he really?
And I'm like, honey, you got to slow down on the pretzels.
He can steal it.
It's just only a few. Oh my God! Oh, he's gonna love this.
Yeah.
That's very. I will tell him.
Thank you so
that's
much.
yum.
Yeah, thank you.
Yum.